Hello and welcome to the High Maintenance Hippie podcast. This is your host, Ashley from Ashley Taylor Wellness. On this podcast, we talk about all things beauty, health, wellness, and optimization. Being a high maintenance hippie represents not being boxed in, as I strongly believe that one size does not fit all. I'm a nurse turned coach, and I have learned so much about both conventional and alternative options, and I want to help you expand your options. I'm here to inspire you to learn new ways to improve your quality of life and to take your power back. I'm so excited that you're here, so let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the High Maintenance Hippie podcast. I'm very excited for today's discussion because it's not a secret that I have done Botox, filler, all the things. And I will be very transparent that a lot of that came from wanting to seek approval from others and look a certain way and thinking it would make me happy. I hope you know by now I'm not here to judge anyone that chooses these things, but I didn't learn everything that I knew today. And I'll also be sharing some interesting findings I just had from an MRI. But my guest is someone that I recently met at a conference, and she spoke about a lot of the other things that we don't know about regarding toxic beauty. So I would like to introduce my guest, Dr. Diane Kazer, and she is a board-certified ND, trauma-informed holistic health coach, certified toxicity and detox specialist, and she has her own podcast called Cleanse, Heal, Ignite. So also the author of an amazing book that I purchased. It's on Amazon, Killer Breasts. So thank you so much for being here, Diane. I really appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you too, Ashley. When I met you at the conference, it was just like, high maintenance hippie. It's pretty perfect because it speaks to the polarity of the world that we're in and all the pressure for us to be beautiful. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the work that you're doing in the world too.
Thank you. Something that made me feel that I wanted to connect with you was obviously you have a very strong stance. However, I never felt judged. You gave me the biggest hug. And I remember in your speech, you wanted to hug everyone. And you mentioned that it was so hard to connect with others when you had your breast implants. And that's a really important point that many of us don't think about. You know, we learn about heart-to-heart hugs. But I'd really like to hear just more about your journey. We'll start with, why did you become a naturopathic doctor? And what was the timeline with that and the world of bodybuilding and all of that? So if you could educate us on your background, I would love that.
Absolutely. So I actually started my health and I guess you'd say fitness journey. I've played soccer since I could walk, and I was pretty much, here's me at the age of 4. And I always like to talk about our inner child and loving our inner child. And so we'll get to that. This is little Diane. And I started playing soccer when I was her age, 4. And then I became a pro soccer player, played in college. So that's really what kickstarted my fitness journey. And I would say my strive to excellence. I would also say I'm a recovering perfectionist. So, you look at like excellence and perfection, it's on the same spectrum. But one is the shadow side, and one is very ego-based and very selfish and very living in lack and controlling and competitive and dogmatic. The other side is just doing our best and being our best, but not competing against others. It's competing against maybe a version of ourselves that's not exhibiting love, and maybe we're in our ego. So I love to speak about that as, a holistic health coach, looking at coming together, not competing. And so we do that within our own 2 eyes first. What we experience out there is a direct reflection of what we're creating within here. And a lot of that has been, very, very dogmatic programming. And I like to focus on the divine unprogramming so we can get rid of a lot of these traumas. So that's actually what happened. Is I was a pro soccer player at the age of 21. I played in Germany in a team called the Bundesliga. Long story short, was a financial planner in my 20s. I really love to help people. My greatest gift here on this planet is to serve God and to live in truth and to let truth be the light, to guide others toward their own sovereignty and personal freedom, be that from toxic beauty or toxic thoughts or toxins in our food, toxins in our air, toxins that are killing our animals even, causing cancer. This is not just genetic. This is, a world of toxicity from all angles. And so when I moved to Orange County after I sold my financial planning practice, Orange County is like, I call it plastic county. Like everybody's walking around with these things, these breast implants. And so you become a product of your environment, right? And you may have heard this statement, but that you're like the average of the top 5 people that you surround yourself with, right? And so Orange County, plastic county, I just started looking around going, well, I guess I better get boobs because that's what you do here. And I actually became a bodybuilder. At that time, I had some time to invest in my health and myself and buy some time between selling my practice and learning what do I want to do next with my life. And I became a competitive bodybuilder. I won my second show overall, was qualified to compete in California State and Nationals. And then the ego shadow side got flipped on by my coach, my bodybuilding coach, that said, Diane, if you're going to compete, if you're going to work with us, if you're going to serve my team, whoa, sounds like somebody owned me, but I was allowing myself to be owned. You need to get breast implants. So I sat with that, the 10% body fat that I was, and I understand that this is not why many people get breast implants, right? But the bottom line in the core weed of it was that I needed to compete. I needed the upper hand. I needed to be at least in the same category of all these other women on stage who had breast implants, because otherwise I just was flat. So that's why personally I got them. It was the pressure of Orange County. It was the competitive edge, wanting to win, do what it takes. That was not heart-centered, obviously. That was not striving for excellence. That was striving to compete.
Yes. Well, thank you for just being honest about that. And, when I think and reflect about why I did certain procedures, it was to seek external validation. I don't know if that's what I believed, but it's interesting you mentioned Orange County because I'm a longtime Real Housewives watcher. And that's really the only thing that I watch. And, we all have our vices, but how has that programming shaped my perception of what women look like? And then moving to LA in 2016, it's everywhere. I was just in LA last week for a Prenuvo scan, which I'll talk about a little later. And for a moment, I kind of felt like a low maintenance hippie, which is fine, whatever works. But it was such a different world. I see these BBLs and all this work done. And as always, I'm not here to judge anyone that chooses those things, but I think it's important to ask ourselves, why? Are we doing this for ourselves? Are we doing this because we think it's going to attract the right partner? And I don't think people really spend time to sit with that.
I agree. It's this constant, and I always say it's the toxic treadmill of broken belief systems that has us choosing toxic beauty to fix these externally defined imperfections, as long as these dark forces have us believing that we're not whole, perfect, and beautiful as we are. Then how can we connect to our higher self? How can we connect to our heart? How can we connect to God? This is I don't know how much at this point, but billions, the biggest industry, aside from pharmaceuticals. I don't even call it the beauty industry. I call it the toxic beauty industry. And as long as we're insecure, we're great buyers. We're great subscribers. And we're losing every day of our life with every toxic beauty choice that we make, starting from the false programming that has us in this prison, this plastic prison. And I have an image in my book, Killer Breasts, that I talk about. It's the top 10 prison bars. And it's Real Housewives of whatever county. It's Baywatch. It's Barbie. I actually have served, my own patients were Baywatch actresses who had breast implants, and I helped them on their journey to get them out. And it's a mental struggle. It's not a physical struggle. It's a mental struggle. And it is our own escape from this prison, from the programming of any time. And this is the biggest takeaway I want for everybody to have today. It's not the toxins. It's the trauma. It's like you said, Ashley, it's thinking that I need to do this for some sort of external validation of you're beautiful, you're whatever, because that's what our heart food should be, is approval. Well, that's ego, right? So this is what I want. If you hear nothing else today, there are 10 prison bars that anytime you pedestalize any of these P's I'm about to share with you as smarter than you, more educated than you, more informed than you, more scientifically connected than you, more academic than you, anytime you trust these things and pedestalize them as, and look up and you go, well, you're smarter than me, so I guess I better make that choice because you've done more research. It's not about that. It's also about intuitive, God-inspired drive. And that's what we need to tap into. So it would be physicians, pop culture. It could be our parents. Maybe they were misinformed too. I believe that we're all breaking the bonds of ancestral trauma, and not necessarily genes that have been handed down, broken genes as much as broken belief systems, which create broken habits, right?
Yes.
Toxic habits. Pastors, preachers, professors, our peers, like people who are just going out and getting the Botox or the shots of the boobs, and hey, they didn't die, so that must mean that they're healthy, right? They're still standing, so must mean that breast implants are not bad, or Botox or fillers or whatever. It's not a big deal. So our peers are a lot of pressure there. You know, it could also be politicians, the press, our partner at our job, like whatever our job is, you know, our partner, or our partner in love. Or you could also say position at your job, whatever that looks like, vocation. Most people are working for a paycheck today, not for a purpose.
Right.
So those 10 prison bars, anytime you look up to the Kardashians, anytime you look up to a politician to save you, anytime you look up to a physician to prescribe to you, to put you in, pigeonhole you into a some kind of a category of disease, these are all the prison bars that keep us stuck, sick, and suffering, and seeking out these toxic beauty or any toxic anything choices, because we lose sight of God and whatever God made that is natural here, food that we're supposed to connect to, the rhythms, the circadian rhythms of nature, this planet, we lose sight of who we are, and we're in the darkness.
Yes. And for anyone listening, you know, that doesn't mean that doctors are bad. I mean, I'm a nurse and I am in the medical profession. There was a lot of outsourcing the power, personal power. So I will always remind patients of their right to autonomy. And I would say this is true even about toxic beauty procedures. However, I did not hear the other side of the story. When I was 18 years old, back up a little bit. I was, I think, 17, and I had deep cystic acne. And I asked the dermatologist, I said, do you think it could be related to my diet or anything else? No, that doesn't make a difference. And so I did, believe 1, if not 2 rounds of Accutane.
Accutane.
Yep. I'll never forget it. For each pill, it was like a pop out, and it had a picture of a baby. Like now I think it's a woman that's pregnant with an X over it, circle with a line through it. But I had to do regular pregnancy tests because it was that toxic to the body. And I did know that about Accutane, but I strongly believe that there was a lot more that I could have done to address my cystic acne, that it is a message from the body rather than something I just need to silence, you know, the symptom, I need to make it go away. So, and then I'll get back to how the Botox started. But what do you think about that for cystic acne, Accutane?
Ashley, I didn't know that we had this similarity also. I mean, same. I was 17 when I was really starting to struggle, and of course did the birth control pills, which blew me up, and I was super hormonal. I had terrible periods, and of course it was the air quotes only solution, right? This is, like you said earlier, doctors aren't bad. It's the system that's broken, that doesn't show us, hey, it could be that, let's get to the root. Anytime you're not at the root, it's a broken system. Anytime you're putting Bandaids over bullet wounds or trying to tape up branches that are falling off a tree and not looking at the soil, it's a broken system, right? We're not here just to manage disease, which is what healthcare really is today. We're here to get to the root of what creates it. So just like you, I had cystic acne. I tried the birth control, went to college. It got worse. I was eating dorm food, drinking alcohol, partying, sleepless nights, trying to get straight A's. And I caved. I said, I've tried everything. I've tried the retinols. I've tried the topicals. I've tried all the different prescriptions that were, I would say, that were without a black box warning, like Accutane has. And I just went, okay, I'm desperate. I'm desperate, not just to have not acne, but the deeper root of this is I'm desperate for love. I'm desperate for approval. I'm desperate to look like I have the skin that most 18-year-olds do in college. And I need something to fix this, because there is no other alternative that was being shown to us. That it could have been the dairy, could have been the parasites, could have been the candida, could have been the bacteria. There's so many things that I work with women now as a doctor to treat their acne at the root. And I know that this is stuff that you're working on too with your followers and your clients. And I did the Accutane and I got so sick. I mean, Ashley, I don't know about you, but my lips peeled, right?
Yep.
You're supposed to wear like SPF 500,000 when you're taking Accutane. And I was playing soccer in college, and of course I had to be outside like 6 hours a day, right? So you wear the SPF 1,000,000, but my lips were peeling off. They've never stopped peeling. That's a vitamin A. Really? Same?
That's why I have so much lip gloss on right now. They are still so dry. Yeah. They don't peel, but I have to be very mindful of that. That is collateral damage. I was educated on. I will be transparent about that. Maybe not some other things, which we'll get into. But yeah, I still deal with that.
Wow. I mean, this is now, I'm 44. I was 18 then. So that's 26 years. And I actually created like was it the chicken or the egg, right? Because Botox, we'll get to that as well, is another thing that causes anxiety when you take it. But they say it's there to actually overcome like depression. But it was the same thing with my Accutane. The Accutane that I took, I got anxious and depressed from that medication, where I was not that way before. And then drinking at the same time in college and eating all these junk foods with our poor liver, right? Yeah. I would say if you're not a liver, you're a dyer. And I felt like I was like slowly dying taking that medication. I developed like a picking dysfunction, where now I'm trying to pick my lips where they feel smooth. It's like this self-defeating, never-ending spiral of you're never going to have smooth lips, Diane. It's okay. Some of this is acceptance, and some of this is like digging for, okay, do I just need more vitamin A? Anyway, I digress. What we weren't told, and what I want everybody to know, it's not just this one medication. It is many, and it's lack of transparency. I wish we were told, and why I do what I do every day, and why we come up here and talk to you guys in these podcasts, is that we weren't told these things. Accutane does come with a black box warning. I remember a little bit of that. Your lips will peel, your skin will peel. I remember that.
Temporarily is what I was told.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't get pregnant. Yep, you were told that. But what I discovered 5 years ago when I was doing all this research was, what? Accutane was discovered to have been a drug that clears up acne, but that's not the original intention of Accutane. The original intention of Accutane was for pancreatic chemo treatment. I went, wait a minute, I took an anti-cancer drug and I didn't have cancer? I just had acne? And no one told me this? I think this needs to be disclosed so that, you know what? Make your own choice, but at least be given the truth, and then you can make your own choice from there, which is what we weren't told.
Right. Very interesting. I didn't even know we were going to really get into Accutane, but that's kind of how it all started, at least for me. So I'm in the dermatologist's office and my skin cleared up. I was not able to poop after that. And that's very important, especially for elimination. You know, our bodies are exposed to more of a toxic burden than ever, even if you live a clean lifestyle, just environmentally, in homes, mold, all of that. So I'm sitting there and I see a pamphlet for Botox and I ask about it. I'm 18 years old and I'm 35 now. And I've taken 1 year off and it's so interesting because I thought I needed to look a certain way to attract a partner. And the best relationship I've ever had was when I was not doing those things, when I wasn't doing filler, when I was just what I would consider from external beauty standards, my ugliest. That is not why this person fell in love with me. It was because of who I was. And I call it our meat suit all the time. But needless to say, I asked about Botox. I was told it was preventative. And I'm like, great. Well, I had the 11s, didn't understand anything about what my body could be telling me as far as liver, as far as, these lines and what the face is telling us. So I did it thinking it was preventative, and I don't know that I actually believe that today. So I'm not judging anyone that does it, but when I stop, what is your understanding as far as it weakens the muscle, but how will that affect someone's aging if they are a regular user and they stop? Do you have any insight on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's so many studies that are out there that if you really want to do the digging, you'll find it. You'll find it. You could also go look to see how many adverse events and effects have been reported to the FDA for anybody who's done Botox. In fact, I wanted to bring this up today, and then I'll get to your question.
Sure.
But another thing that just came to me today, which is like another thing came to you today, which we're going to share as well. But I screenshotted this because I think it's important for people to know that these solutions that people are being told as the only option, here we go. I'll just take this. I have everybody I think should be guarding their phone with something like a SafeSleeve, because EMFs are mitochondrial dysfunction, drain your cells of your ability to make energy, and not just that, but optimize your beauty because of cell signaling. So you want to learn how to deplete your beauty? Have a cell phone that's not guarded by an EMF protector and keep exposing yourself to Wi-Fi devices and smart technology all day long. Okay, so that's the beauty blocker. This is what showed up. Botox wrongful death lawsuit filed by parents of child with cerebral palsy. Did you know that FDA, and this is you could follow this gal, I like her on Instagram, Botox and Filler Side Effects. Did you know that the FDA does not approve the usage of Botox in children for cerebral palsy? So this is what is considered an off-label use, which there are more of those than on-label use. Despite many deaths and injuries in children, the non-FDA approval and many warnings against the usage of Botox for cerebral palsy in children, and you can read the rest of that. You can go to her Instagram and read that. And of course, we're recording this on
June 14th, 2023.
Yep. So you can go see that on there. This is the kind of stuff that's happening. They're using Botox. You spoke of constipation earlier. I had the same problem when I was on Accutane, and to the point where then I ended up in the hospital at the age of 23 with these, I call them aliens. They're popping out of my butt. They're called hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? This is very painful. I'm embarrassed. Are my intestines falling out? Yeah. Hey, side effects of using things like these medications that are known to paralyze parts of our body. So that was in reference to Accutane because I hadn't done Botox just yet. And speaking of Botox, it freezes and paralyzes these nerves, and it is said that these nerves don't grow back, that other nerves have to grow around it. So that's why they have more of a long-term effect, even though med spa owners will tell you, and this is what they told me too. I did experiments like 5 years ago when I was really onto this stuff, and I started doing more digging, and wait, Botox was used to paralyze and kill troops in the Gulf War?
Interesting.
Just like Agent Orange, aka glyphosate, that's now being sprayed all over our wheat fields and grains, was used to kill and paralyze troops in World War II. How are these war poisons and weapons of mass destruction ending up in our beauty products and our food supply? What is that conspiratorial to ask the question? I think that, like you said earlier, the most important letter of the alphabet is why. We should be asking the question why, right? So Botox not only can paralyze the nerves in your face, but the black box warning literally says it can travel from this injection site to other parts of the body. But yet when you ask a med spa owner or an injector, which, you can get your certification pretty quick in less than $1,000. You don't have to be a doctor to inject these things. This is actually how I got sick the second time. Very ill, it was the third time I used Botox. But these things, this poison can travel throughout the body and it can paralyze other organs. It's there to paralyze nerves. It's there to paralyze parts of the body so that maybe you don't sweat. What? Yeah. Why are you putting Botox in your armpits to not sweat? If you can't sweat through your armpits, which is a huge significant point of detox and lymphatic drainage, those poisons might just get stationed right there in your breast tissue. And hello, cancer, right? Breast cancer. So this poison can move to other parts of the body. It can move to parts like your lungs, where you stop breathing or have less rhythm of healthy breath, which 70% or so of your detox pathway is through your exhale, respiration. Defecation is another one. So through your bowels. Most people think that's most of your detox, but yeah, Botox can travel down to your colon and paralyze your colon. But yet they're using it in children who have constipation now. That doesn't make any sense to me.
For constipation?
Yeah, to treat.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, you can go look that up too, and you'll find they're using it to treat children with constipation. And I'm like, how? This is an upside down world. So anyway, Botox can travel anywhere and paralyze anything to the point where now these function, and we don't know, Ashley. We don't know. People ask us all the time, will Botox ever leave the body? We don't know. Mm-hmm. Will Botox ever not paralyze or deparalyze organs? We don't know. So what kind of dice do you want to roll in the name of beauty?
Yeah. Okay. So a few things in response to that. I remember I was in my 20s. I was a test dummy for someone at a Botox training. And this was before I was a nurse. So I don't remember the exact year, but the black box warning is from 2009, I believe. So when I was 18, that's when I started, 17 years ago. It was before, I started it before that warning came out. No one ever told me after the fact. That was something I had to figure out on my own. And at that point, I'm like, well, I mean, I'm okay. I don't know if you saw my story, but in 2018, massive health crisis. It was awful, and my body eventually shut down from many factors. I'm not going to blame it all on that or even on that, but we have to think about the bucket and how stressed are our bodies in many areas, and is this something that's helping? And I'll tell you, your meat suit can look as beautiful as you want, but when you're sitting there bedridden and miserable, that is not beautiful. And true beauty comes from within. So what I was going to say, and it looks like you have something to say too, is that, it was like a 2 or 3 day training, and anyone could do it. I don't know what the requirements were back then, but we had dentists, we had all sorts of people doing it. Once again, I was on the receiving end, and I'm like, oh, that seems pretty quick and easy. There was someone overseeing it, but it does seem like for something that, just for anything, it seems like a very quick training. Number 2, as much as I have used Botox, it is strange, but also I respect your decision to use it in the armpits, because you and I both know about how important detoxification is. And in high school, I had a lot of armpit sweating. So I used Secret Clinical with the aluminum, and it stopped it.
Remember Mitchum?
No.
It was it was the worst, least healthy. I used that because
okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, when I got sick in 2018, my Chinese medicine doctor said no deodorant. And I was like, what? I'm telling you, the smell was like rotten chicken soup or onions in a dumpster left in the sun. Like, it was awful, a putrid smell. So was the problem the smell of the sweat? Or it wasn't even smelly when I was younger. It was just a lot. Why was that happening? We weren't asking that question. I was like, symptom gone, case closed. I can keep moving on. So that's one piece. I personally wouldn't ever stop the drainage or detoxification pathways of my body. So that's a big way that it's used. So yeah, I think it's just something that we don't think about, because we measure health by duration of years, not by quality of years. And if you're not dead, and I will be guilty of this too, and I'm here to not have a debate per se, but one of my questions is, well, I feel great, or I feel better than I ever have. So what's the problem? And I think that's a justification I make because it fills a need that I'm still not able to meet from within, if I'm being totally honest. So I will justify these things. So what would you say to that? And anything else you were going to say you look like you had a few light bulb moments.
I did. Being in Orange County, I got to hear a lot of women, and these are just like dear friends of mine, like soul sisters, family, who I got to know over the years. And I mean, we laughed about it, and we still do. But they know my journey, and they kind of gaslit or dismissed me when I was like, my breast implants are killing me. And they're like, oh, no, they're not. And I'm like, here's my thermogram. Please look into mammography before you do it, especially with breast implants.
Thermography?
No, I just shifted from thermography to mammograms.
Okay.
I have seen so many patients go, they won't tell you this, but they smash them like a pancake, and many women's breast implants rupture.
Right.
One of my patients went in, before I met her, I tried to save her in the end, but she went and got a mammogram before she came to me. It was one of my previous patients' mothers, and she heard my story and went, wait a minute, maybe this is why my mother has lupus and is dying rapidly. She didn't have lupus before she had the mammogram, but she had 20-something-year-old breast implants, and they're supposed to be changed every 10 years. And most doctors do this the wrong way. They don't take the capsule out, which the body creates a wall to protect you from these toxic bags that are more than just silicone. They're 30+ heavy metals, polymers, they're adhesions, glues, colors, synthetic materials, around which point the body creates this hamburger looking thing. And then in between that capsule and the breast implant, then there's mold, parasites, bacteria that no antibiotic or anything is going to get to because it's walled off. This is like an abscessed tooth or a root canal that also should not be left in the body. So these doctors might change these breast implants around every 10 years, but keep that capsule and all that diseased junk in there, and then all that stuff inside of that pocket. Then with a doctor surgeon who doesn't know about breast implants or refuses to know about breast implant illness, because if you don't know about breast implant illness at this point, you are living under a rock in denial and just solely specifically focused on money. And yes, I will call these people forward because we've been talking about this for a long time. So this is where I see people die. These pathogens, these toxins, when they change the breast implants, I've seen more women sick from this than anything. They go change the implants because they're told there's something wrong with the implants. The doctor goes change the implants, leaves the dead tissue in there, that capsule, and all this stuff just gets shaken out. And then the women get systemically sick and oftentimes diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, diagnosed with all kinds of things. And in the case of my patient that I tried to save, she went and got a mammogram because they're trying to see if something was wrong with her breasts, because that's what they do. They run all kinds of diagnostics and spend all kinds of money with insurance to drive up all these tools because you're in fear and want to know what's going on. Smashes her breast implants, ruptures them. The toxins travel throughout the body. She gets diagnosed with lupus and dies in 2 months.
Wow.
And I have patients who, like I said earlier, we're joking around, but they're like, Diane, I don't care. I will die with these implants in. I don't care how sick they make me. What kind of world are we living in where women are willing literally to die with these things that are killing them in denial? We have a major beauty reform to do, and my current partner, just like you, Ashley, I was so happy to hear what you said because he saw pictures of me. I gave him my book and he's like jaw to the ground going, those were your boobs before? You were doing all that stuff to your face? He's like, I would have never dated you. But our connection is a God, soul, heart connection. And to each their own, like you said before, I was attracting toxic relationships because I had the mask on, this fake me. So I was attracting fake him. Our masks were dating, but our hearts weren't connecting.
Wow. It's so interesting you say that too, because I've had a pattern of, as a coach, I help people look at their patterns with compassion. And we're the common denominator. So there were a lot of men that I attracted into my life. And I dated someone, and I won't obviously say who it is, but I remember during this time I was really stressed. I was in one of my colleges, and he said, your forehead is distracting me. Like, he put me down all the time. He would make fun of my feet because I had bunions. He's like, they look like talons of an eagle, just like ready to land on something. And I felt so disgusting. I felt so much shame. And he wasn't paying for the Botox, but like the first thing, I'm like, I have to go get more because I thought that would make him love me. But then I had to realize, why did I keep attracting the same types of men? And that's the thing, like, Botox will hide a lot of our expressions. And this is where I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute, because when I look pissed off, then I almost feel pissed off. So in many ways, I've seen some studies that show both things. I've seen some studies that show that people feel happier when they're not, scorning. But is that our only way to address these wrinkles? And that's what I think is really important. Number two, beauty comes from within, from the eyes and from the soul. And this is just our shell. So it doesn't matter what your shell looks like. But it's just really fascinating, the types of men that I attracted. And I wondered why I kept attracting superficial men. Well, and I was pretty superficial, if I'm going to be honest. I valued a career. I valued their looks. I valued, the type of car that they had. And like all of these things, they come and they go. And who is the person if none of that stuff is there? Would you still love that person and be with, or love is, did you even truly feel love? Or was it more of a bond, what some may call a trauma bond? But that was not fun to admit. That was not fun to admit. And the other thing that's not fun to admit is if your livelihood depends on certain things, then it's hard to ask questions. So as a nurse, I'm like, I'm not going to ask any questions because I have a massive amount of student loans to pay, but I chose my integrity over that system. And I don't think everyone that works in the system is bad, but it is challenging. I did not speak out at work about how I saw things, because if you're the outsider, then no one's going to help you when you need to turn a patient or do something. So you kind of have to pick your battles. But if we are being compensated and there's no other way to provide for ourselves as far as our beliefs are concerned, will that compromise our ability to really see things from a different lens? And that's what we're here to do. Just a different lens, not to tell people what's right. So what do you think about that?
And the first thing that comes up is courage, Ashley. God, that is, if you're a believer in God.
Mm-hmm. I am now. I wasn't.
Right? I mean, I called myself an atheist as well when I was in my 20s. Agnostic, atheist. I went through all of that.
Yeah.
And and then I traveled to 27 countries, 25 of them by myself. And I was on a quest. Like, what are we doing here? Or what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. What is God? Where does God show up? What is culture? America has turned me off in many ways. And so I go to explore, well, what else is out there? I'm super curious. And I'm willing to admit that I might have been running from something, traveling to those countries. And now I always ask the question, am I running to something or from something? Mm-hmm. Because if you're running from something, you are in avoidance, you are in resistance, and you are really creating a state of adrenal dysfunction and thyroid disaster. Like, why are we so tired today? Well, sure, it's the toxins, but what are you running from? And I don't mean just physically running. I mean mentally, emotionally, spiritually running from something. If you're running from your own natural, God-given, innate beauty, you are investing a lot of money in this meat suit, this shell that you so eloquently put it. My middle name is Michelle. It's like my shell. I just made that connection. My shell, huh? It's really anything that you're in resistance from, and that includes your own divinity, your own brilliance, your own light. You're sinking your own battleship. I mean, it's Marianne Williamson, right, that said that dim your light for no one, and I'm paraphrasing here, but anytime you dim your own light, you're actually not only sinking your own battleship, but you're also showing the rest of the world that they should dim their own. And it takes so much courage and so much inner work and true detox and addressing the trauma and the broken belief systems and those 10 prison bars pedestalizing our parents for knowing the best. I'm not saying that your parents are bad or they're wrong or they're terrible people, right? But they just inherited the belief systems of their own ancestors, right? So it's really questioning everything and having the courage, like you just said, having the courage to question not what's right for me. And I do believe in true divinity of right and wrong. True right is having total transparency, which is what this whole show is about, which is what your podcast is all about. The courage to shine your own light, the courage to be bright, the courage to do what's right for your soul. And you stepped away from this career that you put so much money and time and effort into, that a part of your ego felt like, well, I feel like I'm serving a purpose. This is what makes me me. But yet your soul's dying inside.
Yeah.
So that's what I see in that, is that if we all have courage to step into our light and our brightness and who we truly are and came here to be and the purpose we came here to serve under God, that gives you more energy than any kind of bioidentical ever can. Because now you're not poisoning your temple anymore. And now it's said that one person vibrating at the highest frequency of love will lift 75,000 other people around them. Imagine if 1% of the world did that. What kind of a world would this become?
Yeah. It's like the saying, one match illuminates an entire room of darkness. Don't take credit for that, but it really is true. And I lost myself in doing these things. And I spoke recently about identity. And, if I have the right job, if I have the right partner, if I have the right face, then I will feel. And I will say that a surgeon that I worked with, he will tell people no for procedures. And he's really big on body dysmorphia. And mine was a reconstruction from something. I honestly couldn't breathe through my nose after a botched surgery, but I had 4 rhinoplasties. I had 4. I look very similar to my original nose, but that journey of 6 years of not being willing to be in a camera, I had to learn to love myself, and I'm still learning, for who I was, not for what I looked like, not for what I did. And it's very powerful. And purpose is something that gives us beauty. And being able to love others. So you also mentioned, and it's interesting, religion came up in your 10 P's. You said pastor and priest, and that may be triggering for a lot of people as well. I was raised in Catholic school. I was an altar girl, and it just never felt right for me. And I completely rejected the belief of God until I was so broken down at 28, and I prayed and I said, God, if you're there, I need you. Like it almost makes you want to cry, because I don't know how much more I can handle. And even in the hospital, I remember there was a time where some people were joking like, oh, they just need prayers. And I get it. Like, you're in a car accident, you're in a coma, there's a time and a place for medical intervention. But on a soul level, we just tend to focus on the physical. And by nurturing our souls and doing things that we love and how we treat ourselves and how we treat others, then we can really be beautiful. So I've updated my definition of beauty from all of that. And it's very fascinating how many parallels there are as far as if we don't have that light from within, which comes from God, source, whatever you want to call it, then we're trying to get it externally. So it's very interesting. And I don't know how many people really think about that.
It's the temple of God and Christ lives within. It is said that the temple of the S character, I don't know if I'm allowed to say those words anymore on YouTube. But
crazy. Yeah.
sounds like Saturn. How about that? That is the other force that governs this external realm. So it is a tough pill to swallow. It was the hardest one I've ever experienced and the most humbled moment of my life. And I've never not been able to get emotional because I feel God every time I even re-experience this story, the day that I was palpating my breasts in my sauna and I found this huge lump. And that's when I just lost it. And I was like, do I have cancer? Because I had cancer in the family. My aunt died of breast cancer. She was a nurse. She was a charge nurse. She was very stressed. Did multiple rounds of chemo and just wanted to go. And then a few years later, here I am, fast forward in my sauna, holding myself, holding my breast, feeling the lump. And it just came to me. It was like, what am I doing? Am I dying? Am I dying to be beautiful? What for? Is this worth it? Who is it for? Then I heard God, and it was like, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you if you take care of you. And it was like, I promised at that point, God, if you can get me through this, be my light. I will look back. I'll write a book. I'll do whatever I need to do to help other people in their own suffering, who were blind, who were not properly guided, transpired, told the truth about what these things really could do. Because I believe that, we talk about teenagers cutting because of self-harm. Right. I mean, what is surgery? They're cutting us open. And all these battle scars, these beauty battle scars, to prove that at some point I too pedestalized pop culture to define and determine what beauty should be, which is constantly changing like we change our underwear at this point. So the most humbling moment was that moment where I was on the ground in my own infrared sauna sweat, and tears and snot, those really messy tears, and you just are bawling. You could barely breathe, and you have a headache for like a week because all this it's like you're releasing these broken belief systems from your head, and it gives you a headache to start that detox process. And just holding myself and going, I'm on my last leg here. Then I got some labs back, and I know you want to share something maybe as we wrap up today. But I got my lab results back, and I do stool testing in my practice with patients. And there's something called secretory IgA. That is your gold standard marker for how well your immune system is functioning in the gut, and systemically throughout the body. Really, the ideal target range is like 1,200 to 1,500, and mine was 33.
Wow. So
what that led me to believe is that my immune system was barely hanging on a thread, functioning at like 3% of optimal. And that's when I realized that just in the nick of time, which is how God works, I couldn't hear the message at 10%. I couldn't hear the message at 20% of functioning. I only could hear the message when I was on my last leg, maybe my last breath. I don't know. But that's typically when God comes in, when we're humble enough, not stubborn, to hear God speak. And he spoke through me. And maybe you're not religious people who are hearing this. It's not about that. Maybe it's source, spirit, whatever you want to say. Don't let that dissuade you from hearing the message. And that was for me. I'm not going to cheat on you again, God. This is the body that you gave me. I'm going to love it. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to treat it like the temple that it is. I'm going to purify the poisons out of me. And I'm going to teach as many people who are willing to hear and learn to do the same thing for themselves.
Wow. I got tearful even just hearing that, because it's just so real. And I think there was a piece of me, part of my healing has just been radically honest about where I am, and I'm not quite there yet. I don't know if I ever will be there, whatever that's supposed to mean, but I'm always trying to learn and grow and just ask myself the tough questions. And having a safe space and support is everything. because it's not for everyone. Sometimes it overwhelms people. So, I'm grateful for the type of work that you do. And I didn't understand how, trauma, whether that's little T's or big T's, we think trauma means that you have to be hit by a bus or, have an uncle do something inappropriate, sexually, but it could be so many things that make us believe that we are not worthy of love, that we are flawed, and there's something we have to do to fix that. And even the word fix, I think, is so interesting. Yeah. Change, okay, but to fix, what are we fixing? And any symptom is a message from the body. So I will share about my Prenuvo scan, one of the things that it showed. But how long were the breast implants in, and did you feel bad with them? Like, how did you? Did you feel great right away? Like, what was that timeline like?
Oh, good question. So I think it's important that we all talk to ourselves, like you said, radical honesty. Mm-hmm. And I teach patients, as I've taught myself over the years, how to speak. Slow down, be very conscious, be very deliberate with your words, how you spell things out, because we've literally been programmed to speak in a way that puts us in a spell. Look at the word spelling, reading, writing, spelling, writing. It's like what they teach us is right. So everything else is wrong. Like everything is really a spell. You can keep yourself under your own spell from what you've read and been taught and programmed in school, which is that whole professor's thing, right? Just because you learned in school doesn't make it right. Just because you learned in religion doesn't make it right. It's all meant to be questioned, right? So right. For me, I like to speak this way. A part of me. So I'm very cautious when I say the words I am or I was, because it wasn't the whole of me. And I encourage all of you to slow down and intentionally, deliberately speak this way and feel into your part. So physically and egotistically, mentally, and maybe in part emotionally, when I got my breast implants, the next day I was like, I'm all that in a bag of chips. Of course, they were Doritos. They were the toxic kind. But I had a chip on my shoulder, so of course I felt like I was all that in a bag of chips. I walked into the gym about a week after my surgery. I think I'm everything now. That did not last long, but that part of me, those parts of me felt on top of the world. Because my boobs were on top of the world, they're up to my chin. And, but physically, spiritually, I knew. I got sick real quick after that. I got small intestine bacterial overgrowth. I went to compete in the Cal State NPC, bodybuilding show. Mm-hmm. After winning my second show, qualifying for nationals, going to the state competition. And I was up on stage, and I could have farted the whole time I was up there because I had terrible gas. That's what SIBO is. Trapped gas in the small intestine. It can't find its way out. So, of course, I had parasitic overgrowth because that's a lot of what SIBO and small intestine fungal overgrowth was. I got just so sick. I looked like I was sick. I self-diagnosed with Hashimoto's because I've been going to doctors for a long time trying to figure out what's going on with me. And then, of course, as a naturopath, I wasn't a naturopath at that point, but I was a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which means that I have been trained to read labs to practice a functional medicine type of approach using food as medicine, supplements to up level beyond food as medicine, because food right now is so deficient in minerals, nutrients, and just loaded with toxins. So I was doing all of these things thinking that I was fixing my body, but then when I got my lab test back for my thyroid, which I self-ordered, I went, whoa, holy antibodies. Antibody? Well, these things are pretty much antibodies. They're non-biologically, genetically native than when God made us, right? So got Hashimoto's, started taking thyroid medications. My skin got worse. I gained lots of weight, inflammation. I do want to make sure I speak to this too, because breast implants, these things are £1 each. I had 500 cc's. And then, of course, the inflammation and the shells around it make them closer to about 5 pounds. When you have that much weight pulling your body forward, inorganic to the body structure that you've been created, that your spine was designated to carry, you're going to have back problems. So my spine was already not doing so well before I got implants at the age of 30. now age 44, I'm looking at how do I fix my back? I've got 80% disc space loss in between my L4 and L5, and 50% disc space loss between L5 and S1. I have many patients who have breast implants, and they have the same problems in that same area of their spine. And guess what doctors are recommending? Allopathic doctors who don't know about breast implant illness, women who have breast implants, and they're told that in order to fix their back, they should have a mini breast implant, which is now called disc replacement, artificial disc replacement. They use the same material. They remove your own disc. They put a small breast implant in that area, and then they wrap it with mesh, which is plastic. If you want to see truly how these medical devices are destroying your health, go watch The Bleeding Edge.
Okay.
And you'll see how mesh of all kind, not just breast implant, to hold, or no, sorry, not just to hold together the discs or that spine area, but also to hold together reconstructive surgery from women who've had breast cancer, hernias. There's all kinds of reasons people use mesh. Vaginal prolapse, they use it for that reason. I can't say enough about the danger that these artificial parts are causing us. And I know that you wanted to talk about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. I remember seeing commercials on TV. If you've had any type of mesh, please contact us. And I'll do an episode on this separately because I'm an open book and I just want to share. But I went to LA a week ago today, and I did a Prenuvo scan, which is an MRI. It doesn't use the type of ionizing radiation that would be in an X-ray or a CT scan, but there is EMF in a machine like that. However, I chose to do it because I wanted to really see what was going on. And one of the findings under bony skeleton and soft tissue is signal alteration within the bilateral cheek subcutaneous fat may represent sequela of facial filler. Please correlate with patient history. Yeah, I have had cheek filler 3 times, Sculptra. Sculptra is not like other fillers. And my understanding is that it's semi-permanent. So it is, in a way, a foreign body. It's not something that goes away. And even traditional lip filler. I've done that probably 6 times. I'm very open about this. But my lips still look like they have filler. It does not go away. There are surgeons that will speak about this. So, I mean, that's quite fascinating that an MRI is detecting this. It's not just some thing, it's not a big deal. I mean, this is showing up on an MRI. I think that's quite fascinating. And then I mentioned this surgeon also who talks about body dysmorphia, the depression rates. And I don't know if you know the numbers, but he told me before my surgery, he said that a lot of people experience depression post any type of cosmetic augmentation. I'm like, what? Because you think that you're doing it to feel better. So I was very surprised that he said that to me. Have you ever heard that before?
Yes. There's a book called The Beauty Myth that talks about this. And it was a surgeon who said the same thing, that he noticed that after people's surgery, they would have a short-term, probably dopamine rush. I don't know if he puts it that way, but it's like a delusional beauty euphoria. But then it wears off just like a car or just like a dress. I mean, because thereafter, after the euphoria, the dopamine wears off, then they're coming back for more. And that is what's happening with the filler industry right now, is that's creating something that I didn't hear this before, a term that I coined in my Dying to be Beautiful movie, as well as my Non-Toxic Beauty Summit, is beauty dysphoria. Because I interviewed like 35 beauty experts, and I asked them, what do you use for non-toxic beauty and your med spas or your treatment procedures? And they pretty much unanimously said Botox and fillers. And I went, whoa, that's what you guys put into the non-toxic beauty bucket definition?
Interesting. Wow.
And so they would define non-toxic as the less toxic version, like Xeomin is more toxic than Botox. But they were all saying that 5 years ago. Oh, I use Xeomin. It's the organic kind. And that's what was told to me by my med spa people, who I ended up doing PRP with, the vampire facial. I hate that it's called that. But I did PRP there, and I kept saying, hey, will you work on my 11s? Same thing. And they're like, oh, you should use, we have this organic Botox. And I was like, oh, what's that? And they're like, it's called Xeomin. And I went and did some research, and I was like, oh, whoa. It's actually more toxic. And because it's thinner, it can travel. It's said to like travel more. I'm not a like chemicals expert with each of these things, but I've heard from some very, there's people on Instagram you could go follow who are, I've learned a lot from about this stuff. And I really appreciate the work that they do. My friend Robin Tout does a lot of work, and I've done some podcasts with her. There's a channel called Never Talk. She's done a lot of really good work on what things are in these toxins or injectables. And so go follow them. There's a Facebook group too. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but you can see stories of many people who are experiencing a lot of these really nasty toxic side effects and are not also told that fillers are implants. They're not just something that breaks down and then you need to do more. There's also, I don't know if you want to put this in the show notes, but there's an Australian doctor. His institute's called Victorian Cosmetic Institute. There's one called How Long Do Dermal Fillers Really Last? MRI scans provide evidence, just like you just said, Ashley. And then another one that's called Filler Dissolver, which is called hyaluronidase, destroyed my face.
Yes, that's also interesting because we're told, oh, we can reverse it with that, but that can also damage the surrounding tissues. I believe there's a ton of swelling. It's very painful. And, if I were to go back to my 20s, this is what I would do differently. And I'd ask you the same question. I would have started other things. I would have learned about balancing my blood sugar and nourishing myself. I was taking Adderall. I didn't have an appetite. And when I did eat, I was taking or eating sugar. So this is a stimulant, and sugar increases the rate of glycation, which ages us. Sleep, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I actually worked night shift for years until I quite literally felt that way. I do like microneedling. I think that is something that can help with collagen. Red light, minimizing junk light, being in alignment with the circadian rhythm, huge. Those are just some of the things that come to mind. But what would you say as something, and let me add to that, sourcing my happiness from within, because I can do all of these procedures. It doesn't matter, because if I can't connect with a person, it doesn't matter. So yeah, how would you answer what just better alternatives in addition to not making our self-love conditional upon how we look? One of the biggest lessons I've ever learned.
Absolutely. And you just said something. I think the most important thing is that if you truly desire love in your life, to have somebody who loves you for who you are, as you are now. And I'm sorry, but Coldplay, this song's got to go, because I don't want no one trying to fix me. That Coldplay song, I will try to fix you. I'm like, wait, what are you fixing, Coldplay? I mean, it sounds so codependent, right? And like a prison that you get trapped in, like, I'm gonna fix you, and like what I can't fix myself, or what needs to be fixed anyway. But anyway, the more that you can love yourself and do self-care from a place of self-love, right? Like, I've seen, including myself, patients doing this whole racing to self-care, and it's like this perfectionistic, strategic, like cramming self-care into a day. I'm like, if you're doing self-care without self-love, you're doing it for the wrong reason. And it's all just fixing instead of freeing, loving your body. So I would say, in addition to what you're mentioning there, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to master this. Oh, all of a sudden overnight, I just love myself. It's a practice, just like yoga, or it's a practice just like being a doctor. Like, it's not a perfect, it's a practice, and it's a process. I would say the protocol would be like, I'm sitting here, my infrared sauna, full spectrum sauna. I love sauna. I do love dermal rolling. I think that's a really great way to amplify collagen and tissue turnover in the body. I think it's far more effective than all these creams that we put in our face. I think if you're using serums after you do dermal rolling, that's a great way to get it penetrated into the body. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you're cleaning your dermal roller. Make sure that each one of those dermal rollers only lasts between 10 to 20 something uses, right? You could also get it done in a med spa, but that's going to be pretty expensive. There's a lot of things you could do at home. Definitely red light therapy. You could use collagen internally as well, like powders, but I think bone broth, I think bone broth is amazing. I mean, just try bone broth for a while. Stem cell, there's some stem cell patches that I use. I've seen some amazing results with deep wrinkles with myself and my patients, and especially the crow's feet, which is one of the main reasons I got Botox in my 11s. But none of the time I went to go fix these lines was actually the time I got the most sick from a woman who got trained over a weekend, and I got the most sick. And I don't even know where she got this stuff. A lot of this, there was like $170,000 worth of Botox and injectables that were seized from getting transported to Canada and America, and it was coming from like Russia and China. I mean, we don't even know where this stuff's coming from. A lot of it is like not even coming from the FDA. So we got to really watch the black market on these things. And a lot of the stuff is filled with cesium and all kinds of radioactive elements that makes our body more susceptible to EMF harm, which mitochondrial deficiency really comes from a lot of these smart technologies like you mentioned. Like, I'm not wearing them now because we're on a podcast, but I always wear my blue light blockers, right? Yeah. Always wear blue blockers. During the day, during the night, I don't like looking at screens without it because this is really destroying. Blue light is destroying your beauty. So watch your EMFs. I can go on and on, but parasites is another huge one. I have a patient right now. Her hair has been falling out for years. And we started experimenting with trying some of the parasite formulas, and one that we use mutually, Ashley, Para 3. We started having her put Para 3 on her scalp, and her hair started growing back and stopped falling out. So parasites are a huge beauty blocker. So too are toxins, heavy metals. So cleansing is important. So it's about what to undo yes. and then what to do. So a lot of people go straight to, what do I do to build my beauty? I'm like, what do you undo that's blocking your beauty? That's just as important, if not the most important, because if you take those things away, like the toxins and the trauma and the parasites and the candida and the bacterias and all these things that are draining your beauty, it's not just how to build your beauty. Those are the same things to build your beauty, energy, immunity, and vitality all at the same time. So imagine you could balance and optimize your hormones while also building your beauty, and then your gut, and you have like a sexy belly again, and you have like beautiful, bountiful energy, and you attract the love of your life. I mean, what more could there be? On a quest to build your beauty, you could also build your entire vitality. It's awesome.
Yes. I mean, I could talk to you about this literally forever. And just one thing that I heard a few years ago on a podcast, it was Dr. Pedram Shojai. I believe the podcast was Health Bridge. I've mentioned this before, but he's like, why do women put blush on their cheeks? When you have good circulation, you're going to have a rosy complexion. And if our hair's falling out, why? And that's the thing that's the biggest point that I want to make is, if you are doing something, are you also asking, why is this happening to begin with? And I think that's a big piece that we're missing. And it doesn't matter how many procedures you do. You're never, in my opinion, going to be beautiful if you do not learn to love yourself. So that's one of the biggest lessons I learned. And I'm, moving away from some of these things and really asking myself the tough questions, because who we're being is just as important as what we're doing. And I didn't do many of those things out of love for myself. I did it for the wrong reasons, and I don't know that it helped my health or long-term, even my beauty. And I pray that nothing happens because of, the external foreign substance that is in my face, the sculptra, but it's just something to think about. And I don't want this to be fear-mongering. I don't want people to feel shame, but I do want people to feel empowered. And when I got that Botox, because the guy told me my forehead was distracting, that was not coming from an empowered place. So, in wrapping up, any big takeaways that you want people to have?
I think the way I'd like to end this is I'm gonna grab little Diane again. Yeah. And I want you all to find a picture of your 4 or 5-year-old self, whatever age that you look back on your life and you can say, maybe it wasn't perfect. I had an alcoholic father. Okay. But we live in our little, for me, it was unicorn land or whatever it was. You're living in magic. You're living in your imagination. There was a study done by NASA, and I don't know how much I could trust NASA, but, they did a study and they followed children from the time they were this many, 5, And they followed the kids at the age of 10, at the age of like 17, 25. Don't quote me on all the ages, but you could look this up too or put it in the show notes. But they found that what percentage of the children at the age of 5 were considered intelligent and genius score. This is how they looked at like IQ, is based on their imagination. What percentage of the kids at age 5, Ashley, do you think were considered genius based on their imagination?
On their imagination? The strong majority.
98%.
Okay.
They followed the kids from the time they went to, school. I think at that point they were 3rd grade, so they had been brainwashed at that point, and they kept following them. So they found that 98% dropped to 67%. Then the older that they got, then it dropped to like 36%, something like that. It just kept kind of being cut in half. So that by the time that inversion occurred and they followed these kids for the time of 5 to 25, what percentage at the age of 25 do you think these children were still considered geniuses based on their creativity and imagination?
In today's world, just thinking maybe less than 10?
2.
Wow.
It literally went from 98% at the age of 5 to 2% at the age of 25. Why is that important, and why is that my main takeaway? Is at that point, 98% have been brainwashed, robotic, programmed, outsourcing their brilliance, outsourcing their imagination, outsourcing their intuition. And we become a shell. So this is a reclaiming process. This is a reclamation process. To think also about, if I had a little 5-year-old Diane right now, and many of you are mothers out there who do have children, maybe they're 5, maybe they're 25, maybe they're like you were the first time you got Botox, Ashley, 17, 18 years old. What message are you sending to your little daughter or your son who's watching you, and the idea that he's getting that mommy mask, okay, that's my definition of a woman. I'm going to go date a woman who has a mask. And I need to be a mask too. So are we human anymore if we're just masks kissing masks? If we've lost 98% of our population to programming? So I say the way that we can change the world is the way that we change how we see the world and our place in it. And it starts with changing your own inner world. And that's really how we can shift this back to light again, back to God's world. It's not out there. People aren't going to save us out there. You save yourself by reminding yourself who you are. This beautiful, perfect, whole 5-year-old that doesn't need preventative Botox at the age of 5, or doesn't need Botox because she's constipated. I just ask that you really think consciously about the choices that you make for yourself and how that passes down to the next generation. I do not believe it's genes that is the driving force that creates disease, dysfunction, disorder. I believe it is our broken belief systems and our habits and choices that come from that. So maybe you're not passing down bad genes or good genes, but at least work on passing down healthy belief systems.
Beautiful. It's the belief, that's what drives us or keeps us where we are. Limiting beliefs. I talk a lot with my clients about that. So once again, there's so much more that I could talk to you about, but I appreciate your time so much. And I'll include in the show notes your book, how to find you on Instagram, but how can people work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm easy to find. I'm the only Diane Kazer in the world. So you can find me on any, I don't really post on media much more on social media anyway, because of how censored that we're getting. I was hashtagging Botox like 5 years ago when I was trying to teach people the side effects of it and how sick I got from it, and they banned me from being able to use the hashtag on there. So sure, I'm on Instagram, sure, I'm on Facebook, but mostly if you go to my website, which is my home, you're welcome there, which is dianekazer.com. And then you can find my podcast from there. You can see channels that I've been on. You could pretty much do a Google search and find I've done hundreds of interviews on this topic. But I love this one, Ashley. So thank you for having me on. The discussion never ends and our work is really never done. But don't stress yourself out about trying to save the world before you've saved your own. And I speak to myself when I say this too.
Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, I hope that we keep in touch. We're both in Arizona. And once again, you've never made me feel judged. And I don't think that judgment is going to help people change in any area of their lives. So when I see meet a person like you, who I just truly felt embodied love, it felt safe to talk about this because not many people are sharing this information. There are people, but it does seem like a holier than thou thing, and I've never felt that from you. And I just thank you for meeting people where they are, myself included, and there's a lot of value that I've received. So thank you again for your time, and I hope that this added value to the audience as well.
My pleasure, Ashley.
I am absolutely loving this face primer from RMS Beauty. I get it from Citrine, which is a high maintenance hippie's one-stop shop for all things clean skincare and beauty. The RMS Beauty face primer is called Re-Evolve Radiance Locking Primer. The way that I use it is I clean my skin, I put on an antioxidant serum, I put the primer on, and then a light layer of lotion. Once I put my makeup on top of that, it looks flawless all day, so it helps it last longer and it just looks better, sits nicer on my face. And this product, you can save 10% with the code ashleytaylorwellness, so check it out, and lots of other amazing options from Citrine. Thank you for listening to the High Maintenance Hippie podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and leave a review, ideally a 5-star review if you loved it. All of this is free of charge and really helps me to be able to run the podcast. If you take a screenshot and tag me, I'll repost you and shout you out on Instagram. So tag Ashley Taylor Wellness and High Maintenance Hippie Podcast. If you have any feedback or guests that you'd like to have, I would love to hear from you so that I'm not just talking at you. I really want to deliver things that are valuable. So send me an email with any feedback, suggestions, or ideas for guests at ashley@ashleytaylorwellness.com. And I will leave you with a disclaimer. Please know that this is not medical advice or replacement for seeking medical care. Everything discussed on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Always consult with your medical provider before making any changes. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.